So next we have the Coastal Charlotte Harbor Monitoring Network, or the CCHMN, SOP, and QAPP, or as I heard Nicole call it, QAPP, updates. So Nicole. And the purpose of this is to engage members of the TAC to review and discuss updates made to the Coastal Charlotte Harbor Monitoring Network, SOP, in 2025, and the Quality Assurance Project Plan for 2025. And the CCNP connection is this relates to Water Quality Improvement Action Plan 1 to support a comprehensive and coordinated water quality monitoring and assessment strategy.
Wonderful. Okay. So I'm going to give everybody like a little bit of context, background on the project for those of you, some of you are intimately familiar with this project and work on this a lot, and some of you will sometimes hear about it during updates at our meetings. But essentially, the Coastal Charlotte Harbor Monitoring Network is a regional partnership of agencies and counties and cities initiated in 2001. We collect monthly surface water quality samples throughout the estuaries that are pictured up there. According to each of those regions, each region has a different color associated with it, so it's different hydrologic regions. This program was created to fill gaps in coastal water monitoring and initiate a unified approach throughout the study area. So everyone collecting data throughout those waters is using the same methodology throughout for site selection and for grab samples. So this is intended to supplement partner watershed monitoring programs, including fixed stations and then continuous data monitoring in the estuaries. So our role at CHNEP is to help facilitate this interagency cooperation and coordination. This is all agreement-based to leverage sort of the regional assets for more collaborative natural resource management research, including the areas of monitoring programs. So this is identified in our sort of strategic plan when the program initiated as a priority. This is also part of our long-term monitoring strategy, which we'll be talking about in a minute. Serena will be giving that update. So again, the estuaries are divided into 13 regions, each with homogeneous water quality. 5 sample locations are collected from within each region within each month. So the sample design results in normal data distributions, which allows for better parametric statistical analyses. And that can be really helpful for conducting robust comparisons between strata, between seasons, and between years. And one of the things that this requires is a really large data set, and that is what we have now, because we've been doing this for 25 years, which is really exciting that this partnership has gone on for this long. So grab samples represent, again, a snapshot of the water quality at that particular time. And participants collect, analyze, upload water samples to the state assessment database. They also, we pull it from there for analyses of status and trends. And that's some of that, that CCHMN trend study that we heard presentations on probably maybe last spring from Miles Medina. That is that data that was used for that trend analysis. So, it has a lot of value, this data. There's obviously continued challenges because this is everybody doing as much as they can with the resources they have available. The fixed station monitoring is required, so there's usually some funding that's associated with that for point source pollution impacts. But we find this data is really robust and helpful for making assumptions. We don't have to now assume what that fixed station monitoring, the impact it's having downstream, because we actually have the data from the larger water bodies downstream. So we use a stratified random sampling approach. And then again, for this large data set, for comparable data, we need to control for the number of monitoring sites, the frequency, the protocols for lab analysis and sample collection and site selection and data formatting and all sorts of things. So this is like, when we talk about this at the TAC, this is getting into the nitty-gritty of like sort of the quality assurance for this project, essentially. We know partner priorities, funding, and methods change over time, so we continue to update our standard operating procedures and our quality assurance project plan with EPA throughout, and it's vetted and adopted by the TAC as a technical document. I'm probably getting ahead of myself. I think I have that on the next slide, but again, we want to make sure that we're incorporating any new tools, any changes in practices. We We want to be crosswalking data, and so that's kind of what we're doing here today. Again, this is how the data is used for regulatory assessments. This data was actually helped to establish the numeric nutrient criteria for the estuaries back in, like 2009 to 2011, finalized in 2012 and adopted in 2015 by the state to identify water bodies that are impaired, establish pollutant limits, and also to monitor the progress of our corrective management actions, which is kind of what we're continuing to do as we see, sometimes issues in our estuaries more recently. So that's why this data set's really helpful. And again, we'll continue to use this to support the regulatory assessment, but also we want to better understand trends. And so that's what this data set is for in the water bodies for management. And again, this kind of addresses, or not kind of, it definitely directly addresses a few of the questions in our long-term monitoring strategy, one of which is water quality improving, declining, or remaining stable. And so this entire program is set up to address that question from our long-term monitoring strategy for the region. So what do we do within the network? Partners follow all state and federal guidelines for field and lab methods. That's cited throughout, and we're going to be turning to this in just a moment here. Partners adhere to CCHMN standard operating procedures on top of what we're doing for the state and federal guidance. So it's just an additional sort of piece of it. So we're always following the state guidelines as well, so it will always be acceptable for use for assessments. Because again, we want to make sure we're using a unified approach for the region. We do annual field audits. Partners participate in lab audits with NELAP and NELAC, and they also participate in a voluntary sort of lab comparability comparison when we attend the Southwest Florida ramp. So we have our CCHMN field audits, and then partners all participate in ramp as a requirement of CCHMN. That's one of our added sort of SOPs for lab comparability across the region and practices. And partners also meet annually under the umbrella of the CHNEP Management Conference and the Technical Advisory Committee, which is you all, to review the data and methods, discuss the SOPs, update those, and the quality assurance project plan, and have those documents adopted by the TAC, which is what we'll be doing today. So this is sort of what happens at our annual meetings. We discuss the results of the field audits. We compare sort of practices in the field. We review suggested updates to these SOPs. So I think that's one thing that we want to note, and I have that at the bottom there, is everything that's present in these SOP updates has been run through the partners that participate in the CCHMN at our annual meeting and reviewed since. And they have either reviewed or were the providers of those comments and edits. So again, that's part of the process and keeping this sort of dynamic management and being collaborative, which is really beneficial as well. So with that, now we get into the fun parts. So I'm going to walk you through some of the edits, and then if there's, feel free to write your questions down along the way. We provided page numbers on the slide too, so you can check with it within the document as well. So we're going to start with the SOP document, which just has the picture of the bottles on the top, and then we'll go to the quality assurance document, which has a picture of the people.
And I would just note that we only, just to save paper, we only printed one copy that's placed between every two seats. So it's meant for you guys to kind of share and look on together. Just, want to encourage you all to share with your neighbor. And obviously, when we're done, if you would like to keep a copy, there should be enough copies for people who want to keep it to take the copy with them.
Yeah, so feel free to stop me if there's anything that if I'm going too fast by any section. I know that we really appreciate everybody's, review and, thoughtfulness on this. This is a technical document. And this is one of, sort of the work of the TAC too. And I know we have some amazing presentations to get to, so I will keep it succinct. These are the sections we're going to go through, but again, feel free to stop me and talk through any edits. And we do have some of the partners here as well. So, they can also feel free to jump in and clarify anything that I missed. So These are, again, the sections that we're going to go through. This is a summary of some of the edits that were made. Some of them are more general. Some of them are a little bit more specific related to field practices that have changed. And some of them are edits to update to make sure we're matching FDEP SOPs as well. So under the general updates, we added some language related to our, again with the acronyms, our strategic plan. Our CCMP was updated this past year, so we made sure those changes were carried into these technical documents, which are reflective of those in the general updates section. So we added a new water quality improvement activity, assess and report water quality status and trends to identify water quality. We added new references to data use sections, including that water quality trends paper I mentioned, but several others. And those are on pages 13 and 14. They appear again on 40 and 53. And obviously the references section at the end reflects all of this too, if there's any new references made. Okay, so project backgrounds. We updated the monitoring strategy questions, which is what I was referencing earlier. So the the strategic plan and the long-term monitoring strategy, which is a support document to that, lay out sort of our monitoring questions that we're trying to answer with our projects and programs. And so we made sure that the language in that was updated to reflect what is in both those documents. We also updated the sampling design section. Most of this was just kind of consolidating and clarifying. Also, you know, when this was originally written, partners were using you know, Excel documents and randomizing, you know, like the grid numbers to select locations. They have since moved more of a GIS site selection for the randomized site selection. So it's reflective of that in the sampling design. So anybody doesn't have any comments, I'll keep going. We updated figures throughout. Again, these are figures that appear in our new strategic plan. With the expanded program area, and we updated some of the legends in those with the partner roles. We also updated the long-term monitoring strategy section to better reflect our long-term monitoring strategy with all of the ongoing fixed station monitoring by county, cities, agencies, volunteer programs, and continuous monitoring. And some new programs as well. So we made sure, you know, we had some of them captured in here, and we also made edits that we were aware of because we pulled this data out of the Water Atlas. But we always welcome partner updates to that. We did run it by CCHMN partners as well, but if there's anything you see in there related to your programs, let us know. That's pages 19 through 27. Okay, so this is another section where we also pulled these updates into that sort of sampling design. In 2023, after meeting with Chris Anastasio at the Water Management District, the partners decided to retire collection of light attenuation data. So we are not using, we're not collecting, using PAR sensors to collect light attenuation data. For this particular region in Charlotte Harbor, we know that this is a little bit an estuary that has a little bit more color, and we weren't, you know, the optical model that we had originally used established seagrass targets and water quality targets. You know, the region has been moving away from that model and looking at, we have the seagrass targets for our region, but we also are looking at, you know, seagrass trends and as well as macroalgae trends, and that was also captured again in our strategic plan of that move from the region strictly from light attenuation, you know, light targets to incorporate more parameters for management. So, but we do still have a section in there. It's just retired. That way, if we did decide to go out and collect it, or if there was a project or a program or something came up, we do still have our practices captured. This is related to sample depth limits. Those were changed for regions because sample depth limits were set for each region based on the setup for that equipment to collect the light attenuation data. So this actually allows partners to sample in a few more areas throughout the harbor. They were only able to sample, you know, like above 1.5 meters in some areas, and as we know, it's a really shallow system. So this allows them to get into more areas and collect more samples throughout. Okay, partners and data owners. This section was just updated by, you know, any changes in configuration to who's collecting the data. Data owners remain the same, but that's better captured here. You know, Water Management District is directly conducting some of the sampling that was being done previously by CHNEP and FWC. So we made sure that was reflected. We captured historically who's collecting it and where it's going. So this is, again, when we are trying to pull data, it can be better tracked as well. We also updated data availability and analysis sections. So again, the data is being used in more places. We are using it in multiple places on the Water Atlas. That's captured in that sort of screenshot on the right there. And then also more places, the state has set up some new databases as well. It's going to the state databases. We wanted to make sure it was captured there. So again, people can reference this document alone and learn everything that they need to know about this data. I'm going to go through a couple of these slides with these tables. We set up data crosswalk tables. When we did the trend analysis study, that 20-year trend analysis study, we went through each of these state and federal databases and saw how the data was being uploaded, how it was being identified changed over time. And we wanted a crosswalk to be able to track that data through time through each of those portals so that it can be found.
Meeting ID followed by pound.
Okay. So that's what this is. So this is basically, all of the, okay.
Sorry, we might have to pause to mute somebody.
Enter your participant ID.
Don't know who. Sure.
Is there anyone unmuted
Please
online?
enter the meeting passcode followed by pound.
It's chat.
You are in the meeting now.
Oh, it's somebody joining.
There are 15 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
Anybody else in the virtual meeting that can mute it?
You are muted. You can mute or unmute yourself by pressing *6.
Hi, Todd. Can you mute your line, please?
There it is. There he is. He's in now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great.
All right.
Awesome. So so basically these are the data crosswalk tables throughout time in state, federal databases, everywhere you could find it. And again, so now it can be easily identified. So we did that again by each data source. Sorry, this was the Southwest Florida Water Management District, the data that they own and upload.
Nicole, what the need more info? Have you, or is Trevor like aware of that, or does he owe you anything, or do we need to add here?
He attended our partners meeting in August, and we sent him a copy of this to look through. I didn't receive any further edits or updates from him, but if he does have anything, let him know to reach out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So he knows what that more info is.
Yes, he does.
Okay.
You're talking about the table on the right. That is for your environmental data portal. I actually do still need that. You're right. If you could send that, that would be great.
Okay. I'll touch base with him. Thanks.
Sorry, we do have it for the DEP WIN and STORET, which is the predecessor to DEP WIN. We do have it for the EPA, but we do need it for the SwiftMud environmental data portal. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Lee County, we also have a table crosswalking that data.
Dr. Up High Pan Meds.
Oh, chat.
City
Can
of
you
Cape Coral.
mute, please? Thank you.
Gotcha. No one can mute for me. Okay. City of Cape Coral. Actually, that one was pretty straightforward. Same throughout. And then Sarasota County as well. Now, Sarasota County doesn't participate. They have a little bit different of a site selection process, but they do still collect that stratified random sampling data. And so we do incorporate some language about them in the CCHMN SOP document, and that data can be sort of looked at in the same way that the data from the other estuaries can be looked at. And we are having them provide additional info about the EPA WPS portal as well. Okay, so sample procedures section. So there's going to be you're going to see a lot of red and purple, pages 42 through 49. We consolidated that section and added any additional FDEP guidance that we didn't see and throughout. We also added references to, which of the FDEP field data collection SOPs we were referencing directly rather than just one general reference to it. We did distinguish what were procedures that were outlined by FDEP for WIN and for sample collection versus what are additive and are only a part of the CCHMN project. We distinguished mandatory and optional procedures. And again, these additions were made in those following sections: general observations, aqueous sampling, decontamination and calibration of equipment, again, to better align with the FDEP guidance. We also added a few more CCHMN specific QA practices for lab and field communication. This was an edit given by the partners. We updated, again, references in the appendix to this document related to the field data sheet and the chain of custody. New fields to indicate if the sample represents current conditions and if current conditions are typical for the region. We eliminated the fields for the PAR sensor data, again, for that light data collection. We updated the audit forms. We distinguished, again, we kind of did the same thing that we did in the sample collection section to distinguish DEP QA procedures and CCHMN specific procedures, distinguishing mandatory and optional. And again, all those additions were then carried into the audit form related to in each of those sections. We updated references to the multi-parameter field sound calibration form and the calibration log. And so that is it for SOPs. I'm going to move you right into QAPP. And I will say, basically, this will be the short section. That was sort of the longer version of it. Everything that is in the SOPs was then carried into the QAPP in the appropriate sections. And the SOP is an appendix to the QAPP. So, but the quality assurance project plan, EPA does have some additional requirements. But this is basically the reason that we have this for this program is EPA guidelines for quality assurance project plans. All organizations performing environmental information operations, or EIO, that's a new acronym, on behalf of the EPA are required to participate in the EPA quality program. QAPPs are formal planning documents that describe how the EIO are planned, implemented, and documented and assessed during the life cycle of a project. So again, those get updated whenever there's major updates to the SOP. And I believe the SOP, the last time they were officially fully updated was 2019. So this is, basically 5 years worth of updates to the SOP. QAPPs are required again for all work performed on or behalf of the EPA involving collection, production, evaluation of environmental information. And if the environmental information includes data and information that describe environmental processes or conditions. So that's why this fits into that. We're an EPA funded program. We do fund directly some of the sampling, and so that's why we have an EPA QAPP. As I mentioned, all edits from the SOP have been carried over into the QAPP. Sorry for all the acronyms. CCHMN SOPs are an appendix. QAPP specific updates. We changed data to environmental information throughout based on, we have new also QAPP guidance that was given to us in 2023. So all of those edits to sort of match that new guidance are in here. We updated the field sampling distribution list and the project organization chart and table. So field sampling distribution list. We do have the leads for all of the partner sampling programs, the data leads listed in here. Page 30. And then the organizational chart. Again, this is sort of new plot guidance for how to like rearrange your organizational chart. So that's now reflected in the new updated tables. And this may be something more that EPA has a comment than anybody on TAC in particular. Okay, so we try to keep that succinct, but and I'm still keeping on time.
Yeah,
so.
you're crushing it. Thanks, Nicole.
So I hope that wasn't too fast, but I'm happy to take questions before we get to, voting and consensus on that.
Just have one question.
Absolutely.
The new QAPP guidelines have a role for independent review, but since you have the RAMP committee, is that who you were able to use as a sort of outside organization?
Yeah, yes. We have the RAMP, and then we have, as far as the lab practices, and then, look at that section. And then we have the CHNEP, like field audit QA, because
this table, sorry, yes, yeah. I just didn't get to it. Thank you. Yeah.
No problem. Yeah, because we're not collecting the samples directly, so we do the independent review of the field.
Exactly. Yes. Great.
Good question. Are there other questions for Nicole?
Edits or comments?
I have
water quality.
I have edits in the SOP specific to the section for the city of Sanibel. We recently changed our website, so the link for that probably doesn't work if it's the old link.
Okay.
It was just within like the last couple months that we updated the city's website. And then also we have the Sanibel Communities for Clean Water program too, which is a website of water quality data that we update annually. So I don't know if you want to include a link to that site as well. Okay. And it's sanibelcleanwater.org.
And we might, if we don't,
and I think
we might reach out to you for descriptions.
Yeah, sure. I can certainly do that.
Thank you.
In terms of parameters monitored, you mentioned the light attenuation sort of being retired, but second depth is still in. And I was just kind of trying to wrap my head around how that was going to work in the future, since I think in shallow water, there's some issues with getting second depths if you can see the bottom. And I thought maybe I missed something there with the rationale or how we're going to get optical water quality data moving forward.
So, and Chris and Rick, you were there for those conversations back in 2023, and we actually did kind of confer with Chris on this. Essentially, we did have an optical model that data was being plugged into for our region, but we didn't, and that was the original model that Kelly Dixon had created, and then we worked with Nikki to create like sort of a water clarity tool to interpret that into seagrass targets, and we were finding that it wasn't as reflective of like conditions, and that we were seeing more of a macroalgae issue than a phytoplankton issue in our region. And then we don't have anybody that could update the optical model. It never worked for our region the way it did work for other regions, and again, I don't want to speak for Chris and others that are experts on this. And Greg probably has some comments on that. But that was one of the things. They didn't feel like it was actually capturing what was happening for the region, and so they didn't want to make continued investments behind that model for targets that weren't going to be used necessarily. But
yeah, we also monitor an estuary that's very shallow, and the optical model that was developed for deeper estuary, basically Tampa Bay, works somewhat better there. However, I like to make a comment on SECI depth that probably hasn't been fully appreciated. One of the most important public measures of how good your water quality is how visible is the bottom from the boat that's going over it. I think everybody seems to have a view that every water body in the area should be as clear and clean as in the Keys. SECI depth is a nice, simple, direct measure of that characteristic. And if there's any concerns about water quality, it usually starts first with visibility related parameters. So lots of SECI-DEF reaching bottom is a good indicator, is a good value. When it stops, that's when you can be worried about it. So we've continued our SECI-DEF observations. They compatible with wind. We have, reporting criteria for that. The optical measurements we take are very, very noisy because we just don't have deep enough sampling locations to do the PAR measurements in a method that is the most reliable. That is the measuring the actual slope over a depth profile. But we're continuing to do that because we're partially in the Tampa Bay estuary program, and that's what they do. So I'll just shut up there and hope that was a helpful comment.
No, I think that's a good note. I think that was one of the issues that we had spoken with, like Kelly was continuing to work on, and Chris had mentioned, is the bottom reflectance issue, and then the color issue in our estuary and so the optical model was only being used for management, not for any sort of regulatory purpose. And so the data, if there's not a model that is working for our region, the data is not going into anything. It's not being used anywhere. That being said, we left the section in, if there is a chance down the road that we find something, like a partner picks it up and wants to work on it or thinks something will work for this region. It was mostly just to reduce costs for partners for sampling for that, because that equipment is very costly.
Yeah, those light core sensors are hard to keep calibrated.
Yeah. So it was mostly just a cost savings until we could figure out, because we have a lot of data, but we don't have anywhere to put it right now. And so we weren't, partners were sort of feeling the rub and wanting to invest the funding in developing other tools that might be more useful for the short term. And we were seeing the issues in the estuary for now. Again, and this was just kind of what was discussed at the, sort of when we were updating our documents and at previous TAC and CCHMN meetings, was they wanted to focus more on macroalgae as sort of like the impacts, and moving towards capturing some additional like micronutrients, and then the funding could be used for that. But open to any comments related to that or anything like that.
I was just thinking about sort of the upper regions of estuaries where we're trying to restore tape grass, and how very sensitive that is to even small differences in depth because of the really high light attenuation coefficients in those areas. So we've kind of wondered about, are there changes over time in those light attenuation coefficients, and having access to that sort of historical data sets on light availability in some of those upper estuarine regions would be pretty useful for informing the restoration feasibility assessments and things like that for the SAV in those areas.
Okay. No, that's a helpful note too, and we can look at the language too and make sure that that's accurate too. Like, will you continue to see the value of this? And maybe I'll reach out for like sort of how you worded that. And again, anything that, if we do make any edits in this, I'm going to send this back out to CCHMN partners too to look at everything. So
just to further the discussion that Nicole and others have brought forward, the 15-year trends analysis showed we're in exceedance of nitrogen criteria in many of the segments, but our chlorophyll values were unchanged. So what's going on in terms of the ecology and the biology of the estuary is not typical of a nitrogen to phytoplankton relationship that may be happening in Tampa Bay. So again, I think that measurement is very hard to make anyway. So continuing with the second, this makes sense to me. And I agree with leaving the PAR stuff, suspending it. If there is value in the future, then It could be restarting.
Yeah, I definitely understand that idea of these shallow estuaries. When they get sick from nutrients, it's a macroalgae thing more so than you can't just draw a smooth correlation between nitrogen and chlorophyll in the water column. I'm sort of curious about if there's any change in sort of the CDOM and turbidity, the other two major components of light attenuation, though. Yes, lots of our light attenuation is from these things that are not linked to phytoplankton, but I wonder if those are changing or if or responding to different hydrology changes in watersheds and things like that. And I don't know the answer to that. But having the different types of optical water quality data could help find those answers at some point.
That's it. Yeah, that is collected by CCHMN 2 CDOM and turbidity too, so that we emphasize in like future trend analysis. So that's a good point. Like that could be maybe the edit that's made in the language. Like this was retired. We will continue to focus on these aspects of looking at like the light attenuation and like SECI, CDOM, turbidity. But coming back to sort of the collection of PAR data and light attenuation as need be. So I can draft something up and I'll send it out, see what you think, and then I'll send it to the partners too from CCHN.
And
Review it, tell me what you think. So.
if you're gonna make it voluntary, don't make it.
Yeah. So I think it was a squeeze for you all, and we weren't.
The amount of money, because we were gonna have to get a new one, and the expertise it takes to do it right requires some experience. And with that particular position being a turnover position, it's harder and harder and harder to get quality data.
Yeah, so I'll try and draft something up to capture in the front of that section. And so yeah, that's why we moved away from that. And we did have a lot of like conversations with Kelly had retired, who built the model for our region, but we had a lot of conversations with Chris about it, Chris Anastasio about it as well. And he felt that like looking through the amount of data we had, if we decided to update the model, we had enough already. We could update the model, and then if we wanted to refine it later, we could go out and collect some, samples here and there, just sort of strategically to continue to refine it.
So if you're going to be doing more edits, does that mean we want to hold off on approving, or how does that?
Approve with those edits.
Approve with those edits? Okay. Okay, are there any other comments or questions, concerns, edits? Okay. With that in mind, would someone like to make a motion to approve?
Hey, Nicole, I just had another follow-up question on, I think I heard the last person mention this. Are we approving we're approving the draft, but there's edits that are still to come. So do we want to, well, I don't know what we're approving. Are we approving it as is? And then we're just going to, do we get a chance to review it again after the edits, or is this it?
Do we have the edits understood as to what they are? Because we can, just like minutes, you could approve with the edits that have been discussed, and then we can add them in, just like we would do with minutes.
So we could drop that edit
If
right now.
If the edits are not understood, that's a different issue. But do we, I know I heard Dana's edits. They were very specific things that I wrote down that we can add. Are there any others?
Yeah, so that, would you all be comfortable approving it with the edit of adding in, checking the link for Sanibel, for the city of Sanibel, making sure that's updated, and then adding in a small section to reference the Sanibel Clean communities for clean water as a section in the long-term monitoring strategy. And then the other edits that we would need to kind of co-draft right now to be adopted would be what we're writing. If you guys look at the SOP, so we need to go to that light attenuation section that was retired. And what I'm proposing is writing a sentence at the top of that related. What page is that? Everybody turn to 40?
38.
38, okay. Because that would be the way that we could prove it right now, is if we co-draft it and approve it right now. So the light measurement section, so all it says right now at the top is suspended 2023. So we could add a sentence after suspended 2023, and it could say, suspended 2023, this light attenuation data collection was suspended on this date. Understanding partners would focus on other measures that capture water clarity, including CDOM, turbidity, and SECI depth. Now, if anybody wants to make edits to that sentence.
I would just add chlorophyll, turbidity, CDOM, and SECI disc. And SECI disc, there's a calculation that's required to get to light attenuation coefficients. So, I mean, whoever's doing the analysis is going to do that, but continuing to collect those will give us transparency values. I think this is a fairly minor issue. I mean, I'm ready to vote for the changes myself.
Was that a
So with that sentence, so collection of light attenuation data was suspended in 2023. Partners will continue to focus on collection of chlorophyll A, CDOM, turbidity, and SECI depth.
there's no edits to that sentence and the other changes that Nicole mentioned?
I would recommend that you not say CDOM, but you say color, because while they're surrogates for roughly the same thing, they're not the same thing. Like CDOM there's different methodologies for measuring that. We measure color.
Thank you, Chris. That's a good one. Okay.
So with that one in mind as well, color instead of CDOM, and then the other sentence Nicole said, is there a motion to approve with those edits?
I'll make the motion to approve with the edits.
I think
Okay, so this was for the approval of the 2025 updated CCHNN SOP and the EPA QAPP, and we had to approve in the second.
So now we vote.
So now we vote to approve. So all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, and then is there a call for any no or abstention votes? All right, it was